Hello YouTube. So this is going to be my discussion on Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution. For those of you who do not know, Article 2 covers the executive branch and executive branch rights and powers. It covers the President of the United States, the Vice President of the United States, the way to remove and administrate people who are considered executives of departments, and so on. Now it starts right off with Section 1 and no real preamble. And Section 1 establishes the process for creating the Electoral College, how the Electoral College is to act, the term length of a president, the required qualifications of a president. It also covers the vice president, and Congress's role dealing with issues with the presidency, specifically in the event of death, disablement, inability to continue to maintain the powers of the office. It also gives the exact words of the electoral oath. That is the oath that the president swears when they are brought into office on January 20th, every time there is a new president. Now, those wordings are very specific. The second section goes on into the actual powers of the president. It gives the president complete control of the U.S. Army and the U.S. Navy, as well as the ability to call up state militias to act in service and support of the U.S. Army and Navy. It gives him the option of creating principal officers to execute orders within the offices of the United States. So it gives him the ability to create the secretaries of his cabinet. It gives him the ability to establish an advice council, which is the cabinet. It also gives the president sole right to grant reprieves and pardons for any kind of criminal activity except impeachment. So somebody who gets impeached can never be pardoned, can never be given a reprieve by the U.S. president, vice president, or any executive. Impeachment is for life. Now, it also gives the president the right to create treaties along with a consent of 2/3 of the Senate. It gives the Senate 2/3, now 50% determination on the appointment of ambassadors, judges to the Supreme Court, and other positions. It also gives the Senate the right to review and approve any treaties that are attempted to be negotiated by the president. And it gives the president the ability to give direct orders to the executive offices and officers he has created. So this is really where you get the power of the executive order, the executive memoranda, and the proclamations. Now, Section 3 of Article 2 discusses something a lot of people don't talk about, except right when it's happening, and that is the State of the Union. The State of the Union is actually mandated in our Constitution, and it specifically states that upon time to time, the President is required to give an address to Congress upon the state of the Union. In there, he is to talk about things that he would like Congress to address, what is going on in the Union, what issues he sees and have addressed in what fashions, and how Congress may better help deal with those issues. Now, for some reason in this, it also discusses how the president is able to call emergency sessions of Congress. And this seems kind of foreign because in this day and age, Congress is pretty much in session 24/7, 365. There's a brief recess in the summer for like 2-3 weeks. There's a brief recess in the winter, usually right around the winter holidays. and then the rest of the time the federal Congress is in session. Well, this is kind of antithetical to what was actually created by the Constitution. The Constitution created a limited government and expected them to not be in session all the time. So it gave the president the ability to call special sessions of either the House, the Senate, or both together, and particularly upon how it pertains to dealing with defense of the nation or emergency states in the nation. It also states that the president may appoint ambassadors and other public executives while Congress is in recess if the position needs to be filled. Now, this is something that President Obama took huge advantage of, and it's part of the reason the filibuster rule in the Senate was blown up under the Democrats, was that the Republican senators were stopping the 60%, the 66% approval for cabinet members, judges, and other such positions. And so the Democrats decided to remove the filibuster rule. But prior to that, President Obama attempted to make several recess appointments, which were then summarily challenged. And the reason they were challenged, and rightfully so, is that Congress no longer has large periods of recess. The waiting of 2 weeks was not integral to the security of the Union for a judge to be appointed in Seattle. I'm sorry, 2 weeks is not enough time to be life-threatening or union-threatening, to be missing a low-level circuit judge. It really isn't. And so the court found in favor of the Senate, and at which point the Senate then blew up the filibuster rule in order to get that person put onto the bench anyway. Now, it also states that the president must take care of the administration of law, and it states it as thus: the U.S. president must faithfully execute the law. Now, what is a faithful execution? Well, that means that they have to perform the law as written and not as they would like. So a lot of the executive orders that were adamantly spoken out against under the past two presidential administrations, if they did not exactly dictate how to maintain the law as it was written and kind of smooth out the implementation of the law, the orders were technically illegal. And that is something that has been going on for quite some time. And I would like to see the American people start to step back on and push back to stop, because the overstep by the president actually creates more power in the executive branch than truly exists. And that is a bad thing. Our nation is a balance of powers, and we need those powers to be equal and check over each other. And therefore, no branch can be more powerful than the other if they all maintain the checks and balances. Now, the fourth and final section of Article 2 discusses what exactly impeachment is. And it defines impeachment as the removal of a president and all of its executive group for any of the following reasons. That would be a conviction for treason, bribery, or some other high crime and misdemeanor. Now, that basically means that articles of impeachment would have to be drawn, as we discussed in Article 1, by the House, under good faith that the president has violated the law and should be removed from office. They would then have to be brought to the Senate with a 2/3 majority vote of conviction, and at which point the president and all of his executive staff would be removed, assuming the impeachment was over treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Now, impeachment can only be convicted for these reasons. That was one of the reasons President Bill Clinton was never convicted over perjury, is because the perjury was seen as not that severe. and so the Senate chose not to convict him under high crimes and misdemeanors because he had not committed treason, he had not committed bribery, and he had not harmed the United States, which is normally the definition of high crimes and misdemeanors. So these are the powers of the U.S. president. That's it. The proclamations, the executive orders, the executive memos are all designed to support this power structure. They are not supposed to change law. They are not supposed to change policy. They are not supposed to give the president some sort of unequaled executive override. The only reason the president can veto things is because the president must be signing laws. And there are stipulations in Article 1 that if the president will not sign the law, it must go back. Otherwise, a president wouldn't even be able to veto law because these are the powers that are given to him. Well, I want to thank you all for joining me on this section discussing the U.S. Constitution, especially Article 2, which is often not communicated to individuals. I will continue on this series with Article 3 and so forth. Article 3 will cover the judiciary, exclusively the Supreme Court, which is the only court mentioned in the United States Constitution as a constitutional guarantee. Below, we have a links to constitutions.com, which gives a digital representation of the United States Constitution as it currently appears, including all amendments. You can also find a link to the National Archives so that you can view the original documents along with the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, all additional amendments to the United States Constitution, and I believe they even have a copy of the Federalist Papers there, but I'd have to go back and double check. Also, you can get a copy of the United States Constitution, all of its amendments, and the Declaration of Independence from the link below to Amazon. It's about $3 for an ebook copy, and will work with any of the Kindle Books applications on Android, iPad, or the Kindle ebook reader. And don't forget to come on over to minds.com/veteran mountain man to have intellectual discourse with me about this or any other topic. Also, if you are enjoying these videos, please like and subscribe here on YouTube to let me know that I am doing a good thing. Please feel free to leave comments. I try to answer every single one. Thank you and have a good day.